You've heard of the Charger. You've worshipped the Hemi. But what if I told you that in 1970, Dodge had a few untamed monsters hiding in plain sight? Cars so quick, they could have changed history, if anyone had paid attention. Before the demon name ever hit a fender badge, Dodge's most unsuspecting A-body machines were already terrorizing the drag strip, and then disappearing into the fog of forgotten muscle. These weren't just factory cars. These were sleepers, swaps, and dealer experiments that broke the rules and rewrote the quarter mile. 1970 was supposed to be the muscle car's peak. Insurance companies were circling, emissions were tightening, but Dodge was doubling down. While the world focused on Super Bs and R/Ts, a few wild builds, based on the humble Dart, were rewriting the book on performance. These machines weren't officially called Demon yet, but make no mistake, they were possessed. Built by racers, rogue dealers, and even factory insiders, these early proto-demons were some of the quickest compact muscle machines ever to lay rubber on asphalt. Let's uncover the top 5 quickest, Dodge-based demons of 1970 that you've almost certainly never heard of. Top 1. 1970 Dodge Dart, Proto Demon 426. Hemi Match Racer, The Secret Monster. Dodge, never sold. It wasn't supposed to exist? A compact economy car with a drag racing heart? A street sleeper hiding one of the most brutal engines ever built? In 1970, Dodge never stamped the word demon onto the fender just yet. But behind closed doors and quarter-mile lanes, something was stirring. And it had horns. This is the story of the Proto-Demona 1970 Dodge Dart, possessed by a 426H Hemi. A car so quick, so outrageous, Dodge couldn't put it in a brochure, but they also couldn't resist building it. By 1970, Dodge's muscle car lineup was stacked. Chargers, Challengers, Super Bs. The big guns were in full swing, but tucked beneath the spotlight was the Dodge Dart. A compact commuter car with just enough attitude to be dangerous. Affordable, light, and surprisingly strong, the Dart had been slowly gaining street cred thanks to its 340 swinger variant. But for a few rogue engineers, racers, and Mopar insiders, the 340 wasn't enough. They had a vision. What if you took the Dart's light frame and stuffed it with the biggest, meanest engine Chrysler ever made? The result? A Frankenstein of fury. A prototype demon before the name even existed. The engine? The infamous 426 Hemi, nicknamed the Elephant for its sheer size and power. Originally designed for NASCAR and NHRA domination, the Hemi produced over 500 horsepower in race trim. Now imagine that force crammed into a Dart body weighing just over 3,000 pounds. That's what a few factory-backed racing teams did. Using lightweight components, fiberglass panels, acid-dipped bodywork, and race-built 426S, they created a monster that didn't just compete, it terrified. And it wasn't all brute force. These cars featured experimental tech, custom gear ratios, race-calibrated automatics, prototype traction aids. One even had a hand-built suspension system that nearly eliminated wheel hop, a rare feat for a leaf spring Mopar. This was no showroom car. These Hemi-powered Darts were match racers built for one job: obliterate the quarter mile. With 4-speed manuals, drag slicks, and roll cages, they looked like Darts from a distance, but when they launched, they transformed. Quarter-mile times dipped into the high 10s, and some drivers whispered about sub-10-second passes. At a time when the muscle car market was choking on insurance hikes and emissions gear, these proto-demons were lighting up strips like it was still 1968. But here's the kicker. Dodge never admitted they existed. No VINs, no dealer records, no press releases. These were whisper cars, passed between racers, engineered in secrecy, and unleashed in silence. Dodge couldn't risk the liability, but it also couldn't look away. Most of these cars lived hard and died young, worn out on the drag strip, parted out, or wrecked beyond repair. A few may have survived, tucked away by collectors who knew exactly what they had. And the irony? In 1971, Dodge launched the Demon name officially, but without a Hemi. It was a branding move, not a performance revolution. The real monster, the 426 Hemi Dart, had already come and gone like a ghost in burnout smoke. Rumor has it at least one of these proto-demons still lives, hidden away in a garage in Michigan, no plates, no paperwork, just a fiberglass front end, an uncut roll cage, and the unmistakable growl of an engine that was never supposed to be there. If you ever hear it fire up, you won't need a badge to know what it is. You'll feel it in your chest. That's not a dart, that's a demon, before Dodge dared to say the name out loud. Top 2. 1970 Dart, 340 dealer, Demon Performance Special. It looked like a compact grocery gearer, but under the hood, it had enough bite to embarrass big block Mopars. This wasn't an official Dodge model. It wasn't in the brochures. But in 1970, a few dealers decided to build the Demon before Dodge ever gave it a name. This is the story of the 1970 Dart 340 Dealer Demon Performance Special, a car Dodge never built, but probably should have. In 1970, the Dodge Dart was at a crossroads. Positioned as a practical, lightweight compact, it didn't scream muscle car at first glance. But the 340 Swinger version? That changed everything. With 275 horsepower, a 4-barrel carb, and a curb weight around 3,100 pounds, it was a pocket-sized predator. Still, some Dodge performance dealers thought it didn't go far enough. The big names, Grand Spalding Dodge in Chicago, Mr. Norm Krause, and others, started cooking up their own high-performance Dart builds, using parts straight out of the Direct Connection catalog. They'd take a bone stock 340 Dart and tear it down, adding 6-pack intakes, rejetted carburetors, aluminum intake manifolds, custom ignition curves, and deep-breathing headers. Rear ends were swapped for 3.91 or even 4.1 sure grip units, while traction bars and drag radials were bolted on for maximum hookup. These were the dealer demons, built under the radar, tuned for street war. Dodge Corporate had nothing to do with it. There were no option codes, no badges, no factory warranties. These builds lived in the gray area, where Mopar passion and dealership creativity collided. Some were built specifically for local street racers. A customer would walk in, drop cash on the counter, and leave with a Dart that could dust a Chevelle SS from a stoplight. Quarter-mile times, high 12S were possible with sticky tires. That's faster than many factory Hemi cars of the era. Because they looked like standard Darts, they became the ultimate sleepers. No stripes, no bulging hoods, no racing decals. Just a small black A body with a secret vendetta. But being unofficial came with a price. Most of these dealer demons were undocumented. No build sheets, no VIN identifiers. If you didn't know the dealership or the mechanic, you'd never know what was lurking under the hood. Some got passed down. Others were beaten into oblivion on the drag strip or the street. Many were scrapped or detuned by second owners who didn't understand what they had. Even today, survivors are nearly impossible to find. Most have been either modified beyond recognition or quietly rotting behind barns, their legends told only in whispers. There's a rumor that one of these dealer demons, built by a Louisiana performance Dodge dealer in 1970, still exists, untouched, in a locked garage outside Baton Rouge. The story goes that the original owner drag raced it until the late 70s, then parked it when gas prices spiked. It's said to still wear its original paint, with the dealer installed 6-pack intake sitting beneath the dust-covered hood. No documentation, no decals, just one massive bark waiting to be unleashed. So if you ever spot a plain-looking 1970 Dart Swinger sitting neglected in someone's yard, you might want to knock on that door, because that car might be more demon than Dart. Top 3. 1970 Dodge Dart 360 Magazine Project Car. It wasn't built in a factory, it wasn't meant for sale, but it ran like it had a point to prove, and it did. In 1970, while Dodge was juggling marketing strategies and emissions fears, a few renegade magazine teams quietly created one of the most underrated street beasts of the era. It was the kind of car that never made a brochure, but rewrote what the Dart could do. This is the story of the 1970 Dodge Dart 360 Magazine Project Car, a Frankenstein Mopar born in a photo studio and raised on the quarter mile. In the muscle car era, magazines like Hot Rod, Carcraft, and Popular Hot Rodding weren't just reporting on performance, they were creating it. Project cars were the ultimate playground, a chance to take factory parts, aftermarket tricks, and sheer audacity, then turn them into something wild. One standout? A 1970 Dodge Dart built not by Dodge engineers, but by journalists. The twist? They got early access to Chrysler's not yet released 360 cubic inch small block V8, a motor that wouldn't officially debut until 1971. Dropped into a Dart body weighing just over 3,000 pounds, the 360 got the full street/strip treatment. Aluminum intake, 750 double pumper Holley, headers, MSD ignition, a radical cam, and 3.91 rear gears. Power was estimated north of 375 HP. With sticky rear tires and a well-sorted suspension setup, this editor's special could blast through the quarter mile in the low 13 sets, beating many factory big block cars of the day. Because the 360 wasn't available yet, Chrysler didn't publicize the build. There was no fanfare, no factory support. Just a quiet agreement, you can use it, just don't say where you got it. That gave the magazine crew creative freedom, and they used it. They tuned the Dart beyond anything Dodge dared to release from the factory. It wasn't just fast. It was fast without being flashy. No scoops, no decals, just cold performance served with ink and gasoline. Readers were blown away. Letters poured in asking where to buy one. But they couldn't. This car was a one-off. A ghost. The car had a brief but glorious moment in the spotlight. Appearing in a spread with smoky burnouts, detailed dyno charts, and bold 1/4 mile claims. And then, like most magazine projects, it disappeared. Some say it was parted out. Others claim it was sold off to a junior staffer who drag raced it on the weekends before wrapping it around a telephone pole. There are no confirmed sightings, no titles, just blurry photos, scan quality PDFs, and decades-old rumors. But its impact was real. The success of the 360 Dart proved to Chrysler that there was a market for high-powered, small-block compacts. The following year, the production of the 360 launched and would go on to become a cornerstone of Mopar performance into the late 70s. And in enthusiast circles, the magazine project set a precedent. Suddenly, tuning houses and DIY mechanics had a benchmark. This wasn't just editorial fantasy, it was proof that smart tuning and lightweight platforms could hang with the heavy hitters. Some mechanics claimed their customers brought in the article and said, "I want this car." It sparked a wave of homegrown Dart builds using 360 crate motors and scavenged parts. Somewhere out there, in a forgotten garage or buried beneath piles of old car parts, that original magazine Dart might still exist. Its project name long lost, but its bark unmistakable. If you ever hear a small block scream like a big block and the paint's just a little too faded for factory, you might have just met the test mule that made Dodge believe in the demon. Top 4. 1970 Dart 383. Big Block Drag Pack Special. It was never supposed to happen. Cramming a big block into a compact A-body wasn't just unorthodox, it bordered on insanity. But in 1970, some die-hard Dodge dealers and fearless hot rodders weren't playing by the rules. They built something the factory never dared. The Dart 383 Drag Pack Special. What came out the other end wasn't pretty, but it was fast, terrifyingly fast. The 1970 Dodge Dart was never meant for big blocks. It was a budget-friendly compact meant to zip around town and maybe light up a tire or two with its 340 small block. But as the muscle car wars reached their fever pitch, small wasn't enough, especially not for those who wanted to dominate the quarter mile. Dealers and performance shops saw an opportunity. The Mopar parts catalog already had the firepower, the 383 Magnum V8. Rated at 330 horsepower and an avalanche of torque, it was a tight squeeze, but with the right motor mounts, radiator support mods, and a heavy-duty K-member, it could fit. And once it did, the transformation was thunderous. These drag pack specials weren't factory-stamped builds. They were concocted at the fringes of Dodge's dealership network, often using parts from Roadrunners and Super Bs. The result? A dart that looked stock but launched like a wrecking ball. Drag racers quickly took notice. With a 4-speed manual and 3.91 or 4.1 rear gears, the 383 dart could run high 12s in the quarter mile with sticky tires, putting it in the same league as 440 powered Chargers. But the extra power came at a cost. The front end was nose-heavy. Cooling issues were rampant, especially with stock radiators. Braking was marginal at best, but for those brave enough to wrangle it down the strip, it was an adrenaline bomb. There were no ads, no model code, no collector registry. These cars lived in back alleys, midnight street races, and the pages of underground Mopar forums. Some owners didn't even know what they had until they popped the hood. Over time, many were lost to rust, racing damage, or worse, turned back into sensible street cars by cautious second owners. But a few managed to survive, passed down by word of mouth, traded among gearheads who respected what they represented. Today, finding an original 1970 Dart 383 conversion with drag pack hardware is nearly impossible. Most were undocumented, and fewer still were preserved. Those that remain are usually stripped to bare metal and rebuilt for modern street strip duty. Echoes of a time when rules were meant to be broken. Some surviving examples have since been rediscovered and restored by dedicated enthusiasts who understand the rarity and danger of what these cars were. Their rebirths are often featured in forums, magazines, or even modern YouTube builds, showing off the brute force and absurd charm of shoving a big block into a car that barely had room for power steering. And these cars weren't just about speed, they were a statement. In a world shifting toward regulations and compromises, these drag-pack darts stood for pure rebellion. They didn't care about comfort, convenience, or corporate approval. They existed for one reason: to prove that big power in a small shell could be unstoppable. There's a whisper in Ohio Mopar circles about a faded green dart hidden in a retired racer's barn, still wearing its Steely's, cracked slicks, and a dent in the quarter panel from its last grudge match in '76. The story goes it hasn't been started in decades, but the 383 is still there, waiting. If someone pops that hood and turns the key, the demon that Dodge never sanctioned might just come roaring back to life. Top 5, 1970 Dart Swinger Scat Pack 300, Custom. Before the Demon Badge ever existed, there was the Scat Pack, and it didn't need a devil's face to scare the competition. In 1970, the Dart Swinger 340 wasn't just a cute name, it was Dodge's way of stuffing a wasp nest under the hood of a grocery getter. It didn't wear stripes like a Charger or snarl like a Hemi, but when you lined up next to it at a red light, you'd find out the hard way just how nasty this little dart could be. The Dodge Scat Pack was more than a marketing gimmick. It was a rebellion. It united cars like the Charger R/T, Coronet Super B, and the Dart Swinger 340 under a common banner. Quick, affordable, street-legal bruisers that could hit the drag strip straight from the showroom. The Dart Swinger 344 was the smallest and lightest of them all, with just over 3,150 pounds to carry and a potent 275 horsepower 340 small block. It had one of the best power-to-weight ratios in the Mopar lineup. It came stock with a dual snorkel air cleaner, high-flow exhaust manifolds, a 4-barrel carb, and a cam profile that was surprisingly aggressive for a street car. Buyers could opt for a 4-speed manual with a pistol grip shifter or a TorqueFlite 727 automatic. Rear gearing varied, but the popular 3.55 Sure Grip made the most of every launch. In stock form, it could run the quarter mile in the mid-14s. But that wasn't enough for everyone. This is where things got wild. Since the Dart 340 was relatively affordable, it became a favorite among younger hot rodders and weekend warriors. And they didn't just leave it alone, they modified it. Some added aftermarket camshafts, Edelbrock intakes, Holley 750 double pumpers, and hooker headers. Others swapped the gears to 4.1S or even 4.56S. With tuning, sticky tires, and a lightweight chassis, these modified darts were suddenly running in the low 13S and embarrassing cars with twice the displacement. Magazines like Carcraft and Hot Rod took notice. One featured build shaved nearly a full second off the stock quarter-mile time with simple bolt-ons. What started as a budget muscle car quickly earned a reputation as a giant killer. Even Dodge took a step back and realized what they had created. The success of the Dart 340 indirectly paved the way for the Demon nameplate, which would debut in 1971 as a more aggressive evolution of the same concept. The Scat Pack Swinger wasn't flashy. It didn't have the billboard decals of a CUDA or the growl of a Hemi, but it stuck with people. It was the car you underestimated until it was too late. These darts became cult classics almost overnight. Street racers loved them, drag strips feared them, and insurance companies hated them. Despite their performance, they were still relatively cheap and easy to work on. That meant many ended up abused, ridden hard, and left to rot behind barns or gutted for parts. Survivors today are rare, and original Scat Pack 340s in good condition have skyrocketed in value. In recent years, collectors have started to appreciate these cars not just for what they were, but what they represented. They were underdogs with bite, honest muscle in a compact shell, and they proved that you didn't need a massive engine to dominate the quarter mile. You just needed the right tuning and a heavy right foot. Their legacy also lives on in the culture they helped create. The Scat Pack ethos of performance for the people, of affordable speed, is still echoed in modern muscle. The new age challengers wearing Scat Pack badges owe a debt to these old-school darts that paved the way. And unlike their better-known cousins, the Dart Swingers did it without hype. No flashy ads, no national drag titles, just raw, unfiltered street cred. There's a rumor about a red 1970s Swinger 340 sitting in a locked garage in Northern California, untouched since the late 70s, still wearing its Scat Pack decals, and parked next to a box of racing slicks. They say the original owner disappeared from the racing scene without a word, but if that garage door ever creaks open and that 340 still turns over, the dart that stung giants might have one more kill left in it. And there you have it, 5 of the quickest, rarest, and most underrated Dodge Demons of the 1,970s you probably never knew existed. From dealer-built sleepers to magazine legends and factory-backed quarter-mile assassins, these machines didn't just shake up the streets, they laid the groundwork for what a real muscle car could be. They weren't household names. They didn't get Super Bowl ads or die-cast tributes. But in the back alleys, on late-night drag strips, and behind locked garage doors, they earned their stripes in rubber and raw torque. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Mopar's forgotten monsters, please consider subscribing to Top 5 Classic Cars. Your support helps us keep these stories alive, one burnout at a time. Hit that like button, ring the bell for weekly muscle car throwbacks, and drop a comment. Which of these demons would you take for one last midnight run? Thanks for watching and keeping the legend of true American muscle roaring.